Today is March 8th, 2011. My name is Tanya Finchum, along with my colleague Juliana Nykolaiszyn. We're with the Oklahoma State University Library, and we're in Perry, Oklahoma, to speak with Ernest Gorath. Did I pronounce that right?
Fine.
Gorath. As part of our Oklahoma Centennial Farm Families Oral History Project. So thank you for having us today. And let's start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, and then we'll work our way forward.
I was born in that room right there, and my dad was born in this house in 1900. So we're not much of nomads.
And what year were you born?
42.
42. And did you, where did you go to high school?
Perry High School.
And graduated when?
60.
60. Okay. Brothers and sisters?
I've got one younger sister and one older sister. Older sister passed away this past summer.
So once you graduated from high school, did you still stay on this land, or did you live away for a while?
I stayed here except when I went on the harvest in the fall when I got my farming work done here in Nebraska. And then from there, I was too young to go to work at Ditch Witch or something there because I wasn't 18 till fall. And then come back and went seismographing locally here at a temporary job, and then went worked in a oil field, well servicing, and had a good boss. So if he needed me, he would just come out and get me and tell me whenever I had time. And I was single, so I usually ended up driving the pulling units ahead of time because they were so large, and so 35 miles was their top speed. Then Uncle Sam's has come here, so I got done there. Went to Charles Machine Works and visited with Mr. Nykolaiszyn, and he said, "When can you go to work?" And I said, I was making $42 a month, so in the morning would be fine. He said, okay, so that was a Saturday morning, and spent about 35 years working for Ditch Witch.
Okay. So when you went to the service, is that what you said Uncle Sam called?
Right.
What were your years of service? Which branch?
It was National Guard.
National Guard.
And it's 6 years there.
Okay, so we can roughly figure that out. And what was your job at Ditch Witch?
27 years in the shear and punch department as the lead man there. And then later, because of health reasons, I went to different areas, and with the back and the arthritis in the hands and shakes on my hands, it was hard to do a lot of jobs. And the doctor told me that I could stay there and go out in a wheelchair, or I could walk out now. So I went one more year and left it there. And
well, during all those years that you were at Ditch Witch, were you also farming?
yes.
So we're at that point. Let's back up then and talk a little bit how this land came to be in your family to begin with.
There was 4 sisters that moved down here, and their dad bought 4 quarters together here. And how that come about was one of the sisters married a real estate agent here in Perry and was able to locate the property. And 2 years ago, we went up and located where Hollyroot, Kansas was, and located their farm, and happened to stop at the church to start with, and they had their 100th something anniversary brochure, and it had all of the weddings, the births, and the deaths all in that brochure. So that was very interesting. And as we was eating dinner at a small filling station, eating place, and asking around, and they told us where the farm was. We went there, and we went and visited. Somebody was coming in, and we was asking about it, and they said, well, where I work, that lady is from the Stoltenberg family. And then she gave us another person that was older. Then they sent us to the county seat on the Historical Society. And so that was a very interesting background of where we came from, where our ancestors come from.
A very fruitful trip.
Right.
So, of these 4 sisters, which was one an aunt or grandmother, or from your lineage?
It would be my great aunt.
Great aunt. So, how did you come to have it?
That was my life.
Well, how did you take ownership? What was the path to you having it?
Okay, Dad and Dad got it in 1900, and then my dad bought it in 40, and I bought it in 76.
Okay.
And so we were living in town there, but I was out here every morning and night, and my dad, we traded places there, and he had never been off this place much, so he went to the house in town, and I had to just double it, and Mom decided that she's going to be there. She's going to tell me how it's going to be and where it's going to be, so that worked good. But then Daddy, every day he came out here to the farm and to put in time, and she would fix the dinner for him out here. In the 80s, he finally decided that was enough, because the more he worked at something, the more he would tear up. So he finally gave up there.
But did your siblings not were they not interested in having it?
No, one was in Midwest City and others in Watonga, but they won't turn loose of all the property. And I'm trying to give it, buy it and give it to my kids so it'd be there. And both sets said, nope, we're going to keep it in our families.
Okay.
But it's hard to rent with multiple owners of the same property.
Sure.
And so I've been cash renting from them, and the house in town we still have. So, and just another job to take care of for renters.
Well, when your granddad had it, what kind of crops did he have? Do you know?
They raised basically cotton and corn and oats, and everything was basically what they needed for their milk cows and the chickens and their geese. The geese was there because you needed the downing feathers for your bedding, for your pillows, and it's a real nice thing to crawl under a good downing blanket to keep warm, because my grandmother was still living here when we was kids, and I had my bed under the west window. My sisters had that, and the folks was in the same room I was, and you can lay in bed and count the stars because it was unfinished attic. And then later on, when I put a different roof on the south side, I put felt paper in there so you didn't have to look at the stars. And
got pretty cold in the wintertime then.
yes, it didn't take you long to get it dressed in the mornings. It was, and we never kept fires in the house at night.
At all?
No.
Oh.
But you drain your, we had the porch over here, the east porch has a cistern under it, and so you'd always pull your plug so it wouldn't freeze, and then you direct your water and prime it again. And otherwise you go outside and use your cistern to get your fresh water, because you couldn't keep it in the water in the house because it would freeze.
Well, do you remember when you got electricity?
I think it was in 49 or 50 in that area. But we started out with coal for a heating element, and then we the folks, they had a carbide gas plant across the driveway, and it piped in, and there was carbide lights in the house, and it was in 3/4 inch pipe. And I took it out whenever we put siding and stuff like that and paneled the upstairs and put carpet up there. I took the pipes out then. But then we went to kerosene lamps and kerosene to cook. But I still got the oven that you sit on the wood stove. I still got it. So it was when you get up early in the morning and milk, and then whenever had the cream separator in the porch, and then you have to separate the cream, and the calves, they got the milk, and the cream went down in the cellar. And so that was mostly. Now we use wood, and for a few years we had a well on the hill and had natural gas. So I had natural gas in the barn for the kids' hogs, and we're still using wood in the house. Somebody didn't like it, but finally we got gas in the house. So,
well, back in the early days, I guess you had an outhouse.
Still has it. It's a 3-holder, and everybody says that 3-holder. It was a family deal when had get-togethers. The women all went there at the same time there. So, but those were fun days too. Halloween, the kids had fun going around and moving people's outhouses. So Daddy and I, one day, we just slid the outhouse back a few feet, and that ended our neighbors playing with our outhouse. But the problem I always had was tornadoes. This has been hit several times. Well, like we hit March and then May the 5th and December the 2nd. That 1 year we had the ice storm, and large OG&E lines went down, and they used our field out here to replace 12 miles of the wiring, and used the helicopter on top of the hill. The ground was wet then, and put their electric pole together with a helicopter, and they just was so heavy they'd take the fuel out just what they needed, and man sat underneath there with an air compressor, and he would put a couple bolts in, and they'd go down and get another part, and it was interesting to watch.
It was entertaining too. Huh? Did you help move some of these outhouses yourself, or you were just?
No. I was in the wrong age at that at that group. They always had neighborhood was always real close, and still is. Mm-hmm. We had 4 neighbors here, and usually on Friday nights, a lot of times we go from house to house and playing dominoes and pitch, and it's always been a real close knit neighborhood. When we was kids, we went to Lutheran school, and one time we had one neighbor that's in the Catholic school, so we had a car full of young kids, and then some of the older ones from high school would be our escort to school. But roads was nothing then, and if it was wet and they'd winch the school bus up some of these hills a little bit at a time, and if we got to school by 11 o'clock, we thought we was in school early.
Really?
But
and then how long would you stay then?
Like everybody else, go home when the buses were released.
So how far was the elementary school from here?
Lutheran School's north end of Perry. We went to Proprio School. And then there's a high school. My sister went at junior high, so the whole family in the neighborhood, we all switched to Proprio School then.
Well, once your father took over the farm, what would he grow and produce?
Well, they just started with tractors then. We still had our horses there, and the Milo was cut by hand, threw it into a wagon, and the horses would stand there, and you can see on this picture here where the board they throw it up against and fall, so you wouldn't throw it over, have to go on the other side and pick it, because you was trying to get as much feed cut as you could in a day. And most of the feed there was the milo was long heads. Would take for the hens and take hog wire and make little pens for them, so the chickens would just eat out of the milo, out of the wire. And then later on they went into selling hatching eggs, and that was a lot of work because we had a couple of brooder houses by the house here. They got certain size, and we put them in rain shelters to keep them away from the older hens and roosters, and they had to be tested quite a bit. And then whenever we get a new batch in August, sell the old hens and bring the young ones in, clean and sterilize all the chicken barns. And in the 50s, they doubled the size of the chicken barn then. So it started out with 500 chicks a day, basically. And then it was the roosters, a lot of high percent was sold as broilers at 3 pounds to people in town. But that was a good Saturday. The job was hauling manure out of the chicken house, and strong ammonium, and then every night cleaning the barn out, the manure there. My sister, I did the feeding. My little sister took care of the chickens. My older sister did the milking. We had a milk machine that was gas operated until we got electricity. And then that was the easiest job, or best job, because it was inside out of the cold. Cows' heat was nice to work with.
That's a lot of chickens. Did you have to kill any of them yourself?
Yes.
Did you have a method?
Caught a chain gang. It was you'd get 6 at a time, and I usually got the job of chopping their heads off the night before you put them in the little cages. And then if it was needed, you boil them or dip them in hot water, and then Mom and sisters would be pulling the feathers. And then a lot of times, if I had time in between, then I would be putting them on the stove, rotating them to burn your pin feathers out, and then to get another bunch together. And so
an all-day deal too, I guess.
It was an all-day deal between milking and chores and feeding. And to have water out there, made a sled and put 55-gallon drums on it, and then pump it by hand into the 55-gallon drums. Then it had floats on the bottom with a pan with a rock so they stepped on it, they wouldn't dump it. But the problem was coyotes. They like chickens too, and so they would run where the milk cows was, because they didn't bother them. So they would have their chicken over their shoulders and go to the milk cows, and then they would stop and eat their chickens. So that was our biggest hang up of having them out there in the fields.
Coyotes. Did you do eggs too then?
Yes, that was during the season for hatching them, and we got a little scale, and you had a sandpaper on a sponge, and you would clean them all up and weigh them, and each egg case would have a different size of eggs on them, and so 30 eggs to a case. So that was the deal there. But the problem was with them is we had White Rock chickens and roosters. They ate about as much as the big turkey because there was a large variety of chickens. A lot of the neighbors just had leghorns, so they was a little bigger than a pigeon, so they didn't eat near as much. But our demand for our boilers was where we made our money at, cash flow. So that's why we had the White Rocks, for people to buy the broilers from town.
Most from Perry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and your dad did that, and then when it came yours, what was your product?
anything and everything that was different. I always liked hogs, and we had like this milk shorthorn, which is a dual purpose milk cow and beef. And so when Simmental cattle come along, I went into AI and Simmentals and ended up with a lot of good show cattle. And performance, I had 4 years. I either had the champion or a reserve champion performance steer in the Oklahoma City Spring Stock Show. And I had quite a few grand champion or reserves in different counties. And I thought I was doing good, but the good Lord took my pride away. Ended up with brucellosis and had to sell about everything we had. And so I never got started back into the Simmentals, but starting with Angus, and now I try to get the high indexing bulls. That's OOHRP or people that do the weight gain, and I try to get bulls that close to 1,400 pound yearling weights and 14-inch ribeye, 14-inch ribeye. And I want the weaning weight to be, because I keep them in the calves back usually for a while. Try to get them to 45 to 60 days, because Oklahoma quality beef that they have out there, where you give them so many shots and in different timing, and need to be weaned at a minimum of 45 days. And so that way when the people buy them, they know they have their black leg shots and respiratory shots, so that when they got them, the calves will take out and grow instead of running around the pens and ball and stir up dust and get pneumonia. So they're willing to pay extra to buy the quality calves.
A lot of record keeping then, it sounds like.
Yes.
Keeping up with dates.
Have the county agent or somebody has to come in and verify, take your numbers off of your medicine containers. So.
Do you do all that by hand or on a computer these days, or?
I don't have computers.
You don't sew by hand? How many heads are we talking about?
My daughter and I work together, and but they got their own property and they rent some too. But right at 100 pair is what we work with.
Well, when you were showing your cattle, you start with the county fair, I guess.
Yes, I never went. When I was a kid, we never went. Only to, in fact, my dad, I don't think he's ever watched me show, and so.
But you were involved with 4-H, looks like, or FFA.
I was in 4-H, and then in FFA, and I showed grain and chickens and hogs, and usually 6 or 7 milk and shorthorns, into how the age groups, because you could show them in one class, and then you can show them the produce a dam, which means 2 calves from the same cow, and you can get a sire. So you could throw 3 animals in a class for a get a sire. So that was big money back then.
Were your kids involved in 4-H too when they got old enough?
Yes.
Yes.
But the problem was Daddy pushed too much on them, and then later on they had 20-some sows, and so washing the crates down every night when they was in there, the barn only hold about 12 sows at a time. So we would rotate, because when we sell show pigs, they have different breeds, and I'd AI mostly myself, and there was jackpot shows, so people always wanted the different ages of pigs, so it worked out good. I took the stanchions out of the barn and put crates with tenderfoot, and so had cameras, so I could monitor off the kitchen sink, and then Grandma, she got the job of going down and delivering because she didn't have a job, and for the kids going to school, and I was a lot of at Ditch Witch, so that was her job. But
Well, farming's a family affair anyway, isn't it?
right.
Yeah. Do what needs to be done as it comes down the pike.
But after a while, though, it was an advantage of she had a large gas heater in the barn where it was controlled heat, and we just had wood, and I'd have to get up and throw wood in the wood stove in between. But kids did good, and in high school, I wouldn't let them show during the week, and so they had the breeding stock on hogs in the first weekend at Tulsa, and then the second weekend was the Simmental's breeding stock there. So they got 2 weekends, but that was a lot of work. And then I think 4 years in that area, I think that my son showed at American Royal, Kansas City.
Well, that's pretty good too.
But that was quite a trip because that was the same time we was having baby pigs, and so making sure they had all their automatic waterers going and stuff like that.
Did they go to roundup at OSU at any point?
My daughter did. I don't remember if my son did or not. But what was interesting, my daughter, she was in 4-H, and she won the 4-H part, and then she was a high individual for the whole county, and that was just her daddy teaching her, and beat her brother that had the ag teacher too. And then a few years ago, her oldest son did the same thing, and she was the livestock trainer for the 4-H kids here in Perry. And so the oldest son, he won 4-H in high for the whole county. And so she really tickled about that too.
Farming's in the blood. Yes, good instruction too.
Yeah, when she moved away, that took me. I said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, well, "Somebody took my right hand off and moved up. They moved up there. Actually, she didn't finish college there, and she's running a feedlot up in Phillipsburg, Kansas. And her husband worked for a co-op doing spraying and things like that. So I told him that either I have to sell out or you come home and take care of your daddy, and she did that. So you can't knock that. So that was a blessing. But Monday she went back to work at Ditch Witch, and her husband works at Whitworth Construction as a mechanic. So he never knows where he's going to be at. It might be Arkansas, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma. Whenever a crane or a scraper or a cat broke down, he gets a phone call or a radio, and that's where he goes. So it's a challenge for her to take care of the boys, the farming, and taking care of the daddy. She does my baling mechanic work because I can't turn my body and ride that way. And so little grandson, I guess, I think he's 14 now. He's gonna get to learn to do that there. He worked for a guy last summer, and he got a lot of experience. So
learning to drive a tractor, he won't complain too much, will he?
He's been on 8 or 9 years old. He was the one that was using the old 2-lunger John Deere to stack bales. He was a lot neater at it than I was. I'm hit and go, and he had to have his rows straight. So, but it was helpful with somebody there to stack bales. It sure saved me a lot of other hours. Sure. And it's easier on equipment when you go slow instead of going boom, boom, boom.
So total, how many acres do the two farm then, you and your daughter?
I got around 700, and she's got 180, I think.
That's a lot.
And then we do some baling on shears to boot. So one year I rented 2 other places there, and she said, "No more, Daddy." Boys in baseball, and she would stop to watch the ball game, and then she didn't clean up or nothing, get off the the baler, go in, watch it, and go back and go to baling, and didn't have on the one big tractor, so I would swath in the mornings, and she would bale at night. And so, because she's a night person, I'm a morning person, so that worked out pretty good for us there. But now we just keep her tractor hooked up to the baler all the time, and one for raking and one for swathing. So.
Well, I noticed when we pulled in, those aren't cows that we saw. You want to talk a little bit about the other critters?
Well, that's an interesting deal there. Mrs. Moth owns the ditch which Charles Machine Works and has the Charolais. She loves animals, and she called me one day out shopping and says, "Ernie, I'm going to Germany in the morning, and I just hatched out some baby emus." I said, "Some what?" And she said, "Some baby emus." And I said, "I don't have no place for them right now." She said, "Well, they're under my kitchen sink, and so get the farm manager as soon as you can and get them out." And so I bought emus, so I got in the emu business. Then I bought some ostriches, and doctor told me to get rid of them after a few years because you don't have working chutes for them. You just bear hug them. And the ostriches, they love to be under a sprinkler system, and this red clay gets to their wings and hang down. So you got to get the large birds and wrap them with duct tape to keep their wings up. Good challenge job. But my neighbor's dogs took care of those. They just ran them back and forth against my metal fences till they beat themselves to death. But we got got out basically before they crashed. So that's doctor made a good comment that particular time. But now, when I got rid of them, I bought some European red deer, and I was up in northern Missouri, and my wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm buying elk." "You're doing what?" So the operator up there, I talked him into buying my red deer, and so they delivered my elk down here, and so that was the starting of a new game again. But it can be challenging too. But I would take them out to the field when I had a lot of extra rice. I wouldn't have to buy feed for them, and so I put them out there 2 hours, and I'm always singing. And so as I was going out there to the other field, I would be singing and have 30 cows following me out there. Then I would go out and bring them back, but they're like milk cows. You walk over here and hit them on the butt and go over there and get that, and unless one of them happened to be cycling, then you leave the bull, the elk, and the cow alone, but they come in. But I had one time where either me or the grandkids left the gate open, and I had to go to town 5 miles away to bring my cows home. So that's a lot of singing. But when I
what would you sing?
Oh, all my life we never had radio much, and so unless it's Saturday night with a wind charger here and a battery, that was our radio system basically till later years. And anyway, the veterinary at the Y called, "Are you missing an elk?" I said, "Yeah, one cow." And so I tried to find somebody with tranquilizer, and the one the dog catcher said he just had one for dogs. I said no. So I just got a bucket of feed, and the guy has a sale barn. it happened to be sale day, so he's a friend of ours, so I just went up there and rattled the bucket and put him in a pen. But here comes some guys from the city. There goes my elk. So I asked them to leave, so I got her and went home, got the stock trailer and put her in and brought her home. The reason I didn't want no tranquilizer, I had the neighbor lady, she's a veterinary, and she eyed several of them for me at different times. And I use most of my neighbor ladies, and they're 70 and above, and they're quiet. And have her brother, the game ranger, he helps sometimes, and her dad, he's large, so he uses the gate to swing it in. And the first time we did it, I didn't have my latch on my chute designed right, and the cow, when she kicked the deal, it broke my leg, and I went ahead and I don't let nobody in with my elk, and so I went ahead and finished it because we already synchronized them twice, and that was the time to AI them. So at the price of the semen, I get the best bulls that I could get from the United States and Canada on their test, on their size of their racks. So I wasn't going to stop. And so there's challenges in life, but so far I only had to pull one baby calf. But did you ever try to get a mama elk cow up when she has her problem? But that's the same way whenever I sell bulls. And they said, "Yeah, tranquilize them." I said, "No, I'll just get a bucket and I'll bring them in a quarter of a mile." And as you're walking along with the bucket, you got 10 bulls running back and forth trying to get in the bucket. And the old bull, he's still in control, so he gets to go in the first gate. Then the others go in the lot.
Is there a pecking order?
There is a pecking order, right? But most of my cows, if they don't eat out of my hands, they don't stay. I like things that's gentle and big. So that's something I really enjoy. But I had up to 70 head. But 2 years ago, we had I had to buy hay, buy feed, buy water. So I had to sell some bovine and some elk. But just starting back up again, everything I've got except one old bull here that everything else I've raised. So
how many elk do you have today?
I think there's 30 right now, counting the younger ones.
Where do you take those for market?
Sell them here at the house. They got it. The elk and deer, they have this Oklahoma livestock, and they whenever you register your animals, they come out and get your license, and then state veterinary comes down and checks your facilities and your fences, water gaps, and things like that. And your back, your gates needs to be locked. But they used to have, I was in the wasting disease program to make sure that they test every year. And then they changed the tag to little bitty brucellosis metal tags. And I wasn't going to have nobody trying to clean them off. Or you can read them with the bulls, with the large racks, because they can just wipe anybody out. So that's the reason I dropped being in that program. But 2 weeks ago, the gentleman, state veterinarian, was out here and through it, did all the paperwork that's necessary.
Well, then when you sell them, the person comes here to get it, or?
Yes. But it's an interesting game. Sometimes you get somebody you don't want to because, like I said, they're all pets, and they don't treat them like I do, and so I'm unhappy sometimes with who gets them, and probably go out there and stick them in some blackjacks and let somebody shoot them, but when they leave their area, go back to their wild nature pretty fast. And so I guess that's what their struggle for life is, their instincts. But when I feed them, if I change a different jacket in the wintertime, they stay back. And it's unbelievable of the instincts that they have on colors and stuff like that. And they got the well up there, and they just go right between the people there and don't care. And whenever they was changing the OG&E line out here, and they was in the same field, and they was right in that equipment, and didn't bother them a bit because they're just used to machinery when they're young. I put them in a yard so they get used to different machinery and sights and sounds and things like that. And that way they're not so jumpy when you need to. But when you get them in a tight, they will fight.
And you sing to them.
Well, you're going to have to sing for us.
No.
Just a little bit? Just a little bit?
I spent years, and I still do it now, and down nursing home, they call it Ernie and Friends. And I started, I don't know, when Mom was down in a nursing home with some other people. And then I started out with older people, and I sang with them. And Aisha Alexander, that used to be the entertainment director for OSU. And now his wife does on Fridays during her noon hour, and she plays there for about an hour, and there's 12 to 15 people that come and join in, and a lot of it was when their parents was in the nursing home. Can we sing with you? Can we sing with you? And so those people are a lot more dependable, older people are. But I enjoyed then. I used to sing at Billings, Fairchild Center. It's for people that's slower, but I've got to have my music in front of me, and those people there, they know all the songs by memory, and it makes you feel like a fool there that I'm outside and they're inside, but they really enjoy that and appreciate that. And song you got to sing every time, I fly away, and they're out there flopping their wings, going around in circles there.
Well, you can sing that one for us then, if you sing it for your elk. No.
I'll pass on that. My daughter asked me to sing solo for her wedding, and that was challenging enough.
All right, we won't make you on camera. We might ask when we cut the camera off. Then. You mentioned county agents earlier. Did they come to the farm when you were in high school, or do you remember your first time that you had any interaction with a county agent?
Yes. That was basically to buy baby pigs then, and because my dad didn't know nothing about it, and he had his game. There's a generation difference between us, and so I had my ideas, and he had his ideas. So that was always a challenge, but yeah, we just one of our county agents. We just at the fair grounds this spring stock show, and we honored or what do you call it? Recognized him, dedicated the show to him this spring, and Jay Hester, and he lived south of Stillwater, but I think he's down in Edmond right now. But his kids came and received the dedication for that, and we had 2 ag teachers all the time, so that was helpful in the afternoons. In my senior year, had my classes in the morning, and then after dinner was ag. Then I had study hall and then gym. So I always got my ag teacher to let me go in all afternoon in the ag building do welding and build feeders and things like that there. And that's what I said. That's just my livelihood is flowers, animals, anything different. Used to have a large garden, but with my back and hands, I had to quit that. But I've got to have my leaf lettuce, and my tomatoes. But my stomach, I'm not supposed to have it. I had large blackberries patch, and I would pick them, and she would call somebody to come by and pick them up every day. But strawberries, same way. Anything with seeds is a no-no. And my favorite thing is Snickers. Snickers kill me. That's the reason I have to wear overalls. I can't have nothing tight on my tummy. But whatever I've raised is always a no, it seems like. But
Well, each time you started something new, like with your emus and your ostriches, how did you learn, how to take care of them and, all of that just as you went, or?
yes, and we had association, and different people from northern Oklahoma and southern Kansas, and they just get speakers each time, and two girls, I think it was up from Blackwell, and they wrote the Emu Journal, and so they went around the country and getting added information, and there was a veterinary Perkins, and he would give seminars on, and main thing like ostriches and emus, there was iodine. If your hands aren't red, you're not taking care of your birds and eggs right, because disinfectant was his main thing, and try to hatch them out. But like the emus, every night at around 6 o'clock, they lay their eggs and cover them up, and it looks like bunny rabbits, little nest, and that's basically the way they would do theirs. But each emu had their particular time that you could go pick up their eggs, but you had to have a special incubator for each one, because the portion of the egg was different, and so you'd have to have how many hens you had. That's how many incubators you had to have. But then I had a large incubator that I put in an old hen house, and I put my ostrich eggs in there, ducks and stuff like that in that there. But my daughter, she says, "Daddy, I want it. That's nicer." But I went around and bought paneling that was good paneling, but the corner was cracked or something like that there. So it's all different colors, and got a commode, hot water tank, heater, air conditioner, sink, and everything in that part of the hen house. And my daughter, for my birthday, made me a deal sign with cloth around the outside, and had a picture of the ostrich she made with the head sticking out of the ground, and says, "Daddy's," what was it, Daddy? Anyway, something about Daddy's birds. And later on, she put a sign on the porch out there. It says, "Welcome to the funny farm," and that was the cat, the Garfield the cat, and that stayed there for years and years till it finally wore out. But and she was the one that always had to help me load up the ostriches or emus and work with the elk. And she said, "Daddy, can't you buy anything that's not dangerous?" And but now it's her family that gets to help, and but like when you're giving shots to the elk, they can turn their head around at 360 degrees in a squeeze. I made a large one that has holes in it where you can open the side and work on their legs, and went to the hospital and got those egg-looking cushions for beds and put on the sides of it, and the tornado tore a brand new trampoline up. So I took it and wrapped it with it, and then put it on the sides, and they don't look out because it's dark. And but that was too bulky and for AI and stuff on the cows. So ended up with a small one that you squeeze, and so got an opening on each end. So if you have to pull the baby, no matter which way the cows go in, you just lift that out, and it's insulated well. So if they kick it, they don't hurt nobody or themselves. And I've got holes in it where I bear hug there, and then let son-in-law or somebody else that's fast give them their shots and tags in their ears and things like that.
And you designed this yourself?
Yes. It took a few changes from what I had, but it works great. And the neighbor lady, the mother of the veterinarian that does my AI, and she would get everything lined up and hand it to her, so it didn't take very long to AI and stuff like that with the facilities made right. We got a lane, and you just start swinging gates behind, because when you're loading at a bull, you don't want him to get a very fast run, because he's going to hit something on the other end. So I made deals that's solid metal so they can't see through, and then I've got the green sunshades on some of the gates that just strips so they can't see through it. But anyway, metal and welding, I've done all my life. Anything.
Sounds like it has come in handy.
Yes, in my house in town, the rafters and seating, everything was metal and channel iron. Built a large garage in town, large double garage, and it was basically all metal. My machine shed out here is all ditch witch metal, and my large 84 by 72 square bale shed, it's all metal. And I built an 80 by 80 shed a few years ago, and it's all ditch witch metal except the post, and it's drill stem, real heavy. And I always got to have everything inside. My folks' car just had 14,000 miles on it. The garage, I was working in it, so I put it in my round bale shed. I should have better judgment, but during the rain, and the Cadillac converter set on fire. And our telephone is hooked to electricity, so we had to go to the neighbors to call the fire department. I called 4 fire departments to be here, because with that much heat and a wind change or something like that there. And I work with the Noble County first responders, and we have a meeting first Thursday of every month. So everybody works together on fires and stuff like that there. And so, but it cost me more to rebuild the center of it, because it burnt over a week of the hay being compact and not air. And I was taking front end of the loader, taking hay and putting it in water holes in the terraces there to try to get it down as soon as I can, because I don't want the wind set the rest of the place on fire. But good Lord takes care of me.
It's a lot to think about, isn't it? Just the whole, a day to day. Probably no day's the same.
No day's the same, hardly. Except my daughter bought some acreage across here, so we don't have to go to Red Rock for her to feed her cows in the wintertime there. And that's been a blessing there. We just haul the hay across the road here, so she's busy taking the tractors there and take hay to them. And I built the fence all out of bodock. The person that had it before, since 70, he had never been on the backside of the place. And so as the trees grew up, the bodocks grew straight, and bodock usually is real crooked. And so all the fence that I put in is out of bodock, and it'll be there a long time. But my neighbor lady says that it looks like an Arkansas lives here with all the crooked posts. But I said they'll outlast the others. I started out with cedar trees because I had a place that had a lot of cedar trees that needed to be cleaned up. But my doctors both have it too, and both of them say that when are you going to quit? Your body can't take this no more. But I said, well, when they throw dirt on my face, I guess I'll have to quit then. But I'm wound too tight for that.
Well, how many ponds are there on the property?
I could say just 3 here, but one we fixed it in 52. Daddy traded out when we was the neighbors went together, 5 of them, and bought silage cutter, because most of us milking, and so we did the plowing for the guy, and he built a pond, and we put a pipe in the bottom of it and shot the level of the water where it's supposed to be to the porch here, so it flows down. And then when I was working at Ditch Witch there, I got one of the engineers that just come up with the first backhoe to come out, because some of that rock is hard, and we tore it up pretty good. And he said that's what we're out here for, is to just write down what broke and what kind of pressures on and stuff like that. And we run it all in one solid deal. There's a sediment basement, then there's a filtering system, then there's a 6x6 place that holds the water, and we put a filtering. It's the chemical Clorox in a large crock, and with the deal, the water goes by so much, and then it lets the Clorox mix with the water when it goes through. And then later on, the neighbors wanted the water system to come here, but they needed so many to bring it this far. And so we use it for the livestock and the flowers and stuff like that. And the drinking water is from the Moore water system. I guess they changed the name to Noble County number 2. But so.
Well, back in the 30s and 40s, do you know if they did any terracing?
Yeah, Daddy has a picture here somewhere. In 26, they took a picture behind the hill, and we have a terracing machine, a horse-operated terracing machine. I still got it. We used it behind the tractor after a while. But it has a picture of him terracing that long ago, because the ground's so steep in that field. 16-foot header, you hit on both sides, and you're not cutting in the channel. So that's, I think, what pretty steep ground, but that's really not put everything to Marshall Rye. I quit the wheat and put everything to Marshall Rye. Disc it in, and on most years you can work it down smooth, so bale it, and it comes up on its own, and fertilize it. And I'm pasturing it now, and in March I'll be putting some more fertilizer on it for the hay part of it. And the main purpose was I used to bale on shears everywhere, and then you spend all winter hauling hay home, and then I made a bale wagon, and it holds 12 bales, so it's easier now moving bales with front end loader.
And you made it too.
Sure. Hammer mill, grinder mixer.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the structures that you remember on the property as a little boy growing up versus what you have on the property now?
Almost everything has been changed, except the greenery, and we put tin on it, so I had to quit painting. And the barn was the same way there, that painted it off a ladder, and that lasted about 3 to 4 years to keep the wood in good shape. And the last time I used hydraulic scaffolding, the Ditch Witch made, it's called Sky Witch, and Mom would sit there and hold the button, and my wife mixed the paint, and using an airless gun, and it just up one side and down, and painted the barn, the house, and the greenery in one day. But when that's a lot of work all the time, and so I decided to put tin on it when I kids had the hogs, and I put insulation inside, 6-inch insulation in the barn, and put plywood over that. And then I got hot water tanks with your white enamel on it, and nailed it on it so you can wash it down easy, and gives the strength of the barn and help maintain the barn. It's been knocked off its foundation a couple of times. We had to jack it up and put cables crisscross in there to hold it up. But the other day when the state veterinarian was here, and he was looking at it, and there's no knots on the sills that run 24 foot across there, and they're 2x10s. And he said, what would it cost today? I said, well, you couldn't even buy wood that don't have knots in the day on 2x10s. And so that the quality material, and whenever on the foundation, it was some sand rock out of the pasture there, but whatever's up on top of the ground, it was at least twice that much under the ground, because it was erosion and things like that there. And every once in a while we take a good of dirt and haul it back against the foundation, so make sure that they don't fold out on us. But had an experience several years ago. My little grandson was taken care of, and I had the truck backed up with a ladder leaning up there, and I took some ropes and a string and threw it over the top of the barn, and tied the lariat to the back of the pickup. And I was up there on the vent up there, changing the wood out and putting aluminized material vents, bolting it up there. And I turned around, and that 3-year-old grandson went up the ladder and got a hold of that rope, and he was standing behind me. And you can see that barn is pretty tall. But the good Lord and I, we have to work pretty close here. It says, don't tempt the Lord, but I use a lot of angels to take care of me.
Well, where would they have gotten the lumber if it was that high of a quality? Where would they have had to go to get it?
Off the rail. It would have to be off the rail.
I forget that Perry had a good railroad system, didn't it?
And it was right next to the cotton gin. So the cotton gin had a large platform, so they would unload the machinery. And 55 or 56, when it was so dry and was milking, neighbors went together, and Farmers Union bought several carloads of alfalfa from Minnesota, and it wasn't all that good, but it was something for the cows to eat, and it was an experience to get in there and haul hay and store it back here, but see what kind of quality of feed somebody across the country would send you. But that was the thing. We got, I think there's 17 trains a day go to Perry. We got the Santa Fe and the Frisco. So we got from Tulsa going west, and from Ponca City south. So 64 highway gets shut down considerably. So when you plan on going to town, you got to give it a little time.
Well, as a kid, how often would you go to town?
When you went to school, went to church, and the youth group on a Sunday night, and that was it. I think when I was in a harvest the first time, I got a haircut commercially, and the only time I remember being in a restaurant was the comeback on the north side. Eddie Parker, that started it on the kids at the stock show. He gave us a free ticket, so we walked from the fairgrounds up there to the north side. And that was the first time I ever ate in a restaurant.
Well, did you visit the Carnegie Library very often?
Maybe twice.
That's okay. We always have to ask as librarians. We ask, and it's a pretty building.
I think there's only two Carnegies left in Oklahoma.
There's not very many.
But in school, they had their library, and the Lutheran school had their library. So that was all we needed in.
So we need to talk a little bit about your part in county fairs over the years.
Well, I missed one since I was 9 years old, and in a spring stock show, and that's when I was with Uncle Sam. I missed the stock show then, and most every year I went because I had sold show pigs or calves, heifers, and then when the kids participated, and now the grandkids, and I was officer or vice president or president for 20 some years. When I finally gave up, I ended up, before it was over with, side of my back hurting. It was the shingles, and popping pills, and I said that was enough.
Well, what would the president of a fair have to do? What would you, organize it, or be the problem solver for the day, or what?
Anytime something was off, if there was electric or problems here, there, yonder, women's building, or just making sure that judges was there on time, which a lot of times wasn't, because they would forget about the Oklahoma City show was open at the same time. We had one night at like 9, 10 o'clock. The judge was at K County and thought that was going to be short. And then the kids' animals were so restless, and we weighed them, the top three, and then that caused a ruckus because some of them give them a drink in between and got weighed out. But it was just daily walking through from the poultry barn, the rabbits, the sheep, and I fought for years to keeping the goats out, and especially in the premium sale, because at that time it didn't take very much money to buy or feed a goat in comparison with somebody that had a steer or a heifer, and the price they had to pay there and the amount of feed. And that was my biggest objection, was that where they would get pretty close to the same as the large animals, and the training isn't near as it is breaking steers and heifers. But one thing I started was the kids didn't want to show heifers, they wanted to show steers. And I said, no, we just don't have that kind of time to put and have to go to other shows trying to justify the feed and the buying the animals. So I got with different breeders, and we started our heifer show. And so now it's basically a heifer show. And several years ago, Ms. Malzahn, we've been real good friends, and she wanted a heifer and steer show. And she handed me a check and said, this is to get your literature out, your judge, and whatever you need to get it going. And whatever you need after that, let me know. And she said, you can use the equipment around here, the large dump trucks, the big Caterpillar front end loaders, and then the smaller trenchers that had buckets on them to clean up the straw and stuff afterwards there. And so I think 3 years that I was FFA alumni president, that we had it. When I dropped off of that, then it dropped. But being an alumni president, we had speech contests and things like that for the kids, and had all the kids participate. That was an FFA. And that way the ones that wanted to go on to other speech contests and they would have practice in front of a person being judged, so that was a help then. And Everett Chafin was real strong on parliamentary procedure and speeches, and so that was a good way to get all the kids involved in a little bit. And so they dropped that too, and several things that I started that they dropped after that. But there's a lot of things in life that I learned, and so that's the reason I thought it'd be good things to have there.
They'll be recruiting you to come back.
They do a whole different ballpark now. They get a different generation completely.
You just go around putting out fires, basically, then during the fair time.
Yes,
probably.
basically. Well, the last couple of years, the manager we had, he was the president before, and we was trying to get our tax money for our fairgrounds, because one year county didn't have no money, and they wouldn't give us any. And so we just unloaded animals and showed them, loaded them back up. And so we got our heads together and went and got us a quarter-cent tax for the extension office in the fairgrounds, and divided that. And then 3 years later, we went back and changed the balance of the money, because they didn't need as much as what we needed to maintain and to put buildings back in shape like they needed to be, and because it was going down to nothing. And so a few years ago, we had a property that if we didn't have a show, it went back to the owner. And so I didn't have enough money saved up in our account, and so I went and visited with the person, and I told him I just needed a couple $1,000s more, and he said, "No, you're doing a good job down there. So when you're ready, I'll get the check and we'll write it to you, the county clerk." And so he purchased the land for us. So now we can do what we want to, but we only had the top 18 inches. And at that particular time, what I was up there was the different fire departments, 8 of them in the county, they had to pressure test their trucks. And instead of going out to the lake or something like that there, and going to make a reservoir there and a water hydrant, so that they could test their trucks there all at one time. So the people in charge was there to check it out. And that's why I started looking around and finding out that we didn't have the right to do anything 18 inches under the ground. So it was just another thing that, and now we got the fire in the 50s, the fairgrounds had burnt down. And when Carlisle had the pony farm out southwest of town, we had our spring stock show out there. And so when they built the new building, and then they donated our show arena area there, family did. So we're real fortunate. So we have a lot of jackpot shows and stuff like that.
So FHA and FFA still quite popular in this county then?
FHA, I'm not that sure of. But they got so many other sports, and band is real strong here. So that takes the contest they go to there. So that takes a lot of man hours too. And that's like my little grandson and his kids there. He wanted to show a heifer and a steer and be on the wrestling team. And Monday was Cub Scouts, Tuesday was 4-H, Wednesday was church instructions, and then you go to a wrestling tournament on the weekends and trying to keep your weight down and the hours of practice there. And so kids are challenged nowadays. We didn't have that when I was coming up.
When you have time for fun, I guess. That's what we should ask too. When you were growing up, what did you do for fun? If you worked from sun up to sundown, what did you do for fun?
That is a good question. Not a whole lot of things I know of entertainment, unless it was just family get-togethers, and I had a couple cousins there that was pretty close to my age, but two sisters to torment and give a hard time to.
Well, did you swim in the ponds or?
Well, that was the bathtub. Whenever you get off the combine, you go up the pond. That was the daily deal.
Not a number 3 tub or a number 3 wash tub. Is that right?
Well, that was the wintertime there. You didn't want to pump that water there and then get it heated there. But like when I went on the harvest in Perryton, they had these tanks up above. At the warm water, you could take your shower at night when you get done the combine. We didn't have that luxury there. And we carried the water from the barn to the house to warm it for washing clothes and stuff like that. The cistern water was just used for household use, and that was it. And you had your filtering system, so you would turn it off until after it rained a little bit, then you'd turn it back on so it goes to the filtering system. And each spring I was skinny, so I could take the top off and go down to the bottom and clean it all off, take broom and Lysol water and wash the walls down and clean it all out. Daddy, he would pull the buckets of water and sand and stuff like that out. The little froggies that got to find their way down there.
Things you don't think about nowadays.
Nope, you turned the tap and that's it. And
Well, would you go into town to the movies or anything like that?
I think I've seen Francis and Mule about 3 times, and that's the only one. Oh, Mom and Paul Kettle, maybe twice. And we didn't have TV or nothing until after I was out of high school, and Mom made a deal that she would buy the TV if I would buy the antenna. Happened to be that she had an uncle that got remarried, and they had one for a couple of dollars, so she come up with the good deal. But I don't watch it much now, except in RFD station. I'm glad they got that real station on now. It's antique shows, and they got those European shows of their horses, their tractors, and stuff they have there. And of course, they got music. They got polka. They got gaithers. They got quality type music, hee-haw. And so everything down my line is what you can find on that station.
Well, growing up, what were holidays like?
For me or my kids?
For you?
We had family get-togethers completely, and then after we got married, we would be probably dinner in our family, my dad's sisters and theirs. Then we'd go to Tonkawa to her grandparents at Tonkawa, and that was basically it. And but when I'm always had the kids working. I'm a slave driver. Somebody said, "Have you kids still talk to you after all them years?" I said, "Yeah."
Well, then, how did you meet your wife? Now I'm going to put you on the spot.
That was Lutherans had a group for single people. We had a Lutheran school in Perry and in Ponca City, and so the group there, she was from Blackwell, so that's where we met.
And got married when?
That's September. It's 2 days from my birthday, so my birthday is the 10th, so in that area. 43 years.
There we go.
There you go.
You got one item right.
It's hard to ask that question when she's sitting right next to you. Because you got to get it right or else, afterwards.
Yeah, but that's a no-no. I don't buy gifts. So.
And you have 2 children. A daughter, a son. The oldest is a son.
Right.
Right, and then a daughter.
We got both of them from Lutheran Social Service in Wichita. When they was both born on Sunday, we picked them up on Thursday. So you can't get a better deal on that.
No.
You just write down what you want, and they call you up and say, "Here you go." But we did, when they were in college, anticipate getting some harder to place children that needed some help there. But the 2 they had lined up for us from Kansas, and they had burnt down some buildings. And I said, "No, thank you, because we're all hay. That's our livelihood here." And so we decided that's what the Lord had to know for us. But we did have some, right around Christmas time one time, he brought a young man here out of high school, and he was sleeping in his pickup and didn't have nothing to eat. And so he stayed here for several months. And then there was a young gal that was renting our house with other kids from St. Louis, renting our rent house in town. And she was going to Langston, and she called late one night and said, "I need a place to stay." So she stayed here quite a while, and she worked in town when I went to work. I take her to where she worked at, and she had 2 jobs, so that really, she was very aggressive. So
Just trying.
what?
What next? When your dad was farming, did he have to have hire help? Did he hire out, or was that you?
He was real small. I think he got, before he passed away, I think he got up to about 112 pounds.
Tiny man.
And so he tried oil field, but he wasn't big enough for that there. And so he worked on the elevators when they built that co-op. And good Lord took care of him there. When they had a cave in, next door neighbor, he got killed. The one on the other side got killed, but he was light enough. It threw him up high enough where he didn't get suffocated. And a neighbor over here, a Negro man, and he was the first one down there to dig Daddy out. But we had our chores done, and Daddy wasn't home, Mom wasn't home. We heard it on the radio, so we were thankful for that. But then later on in the years, he drove school bus. But milking, that didn't help nothing, because I had milking done at my job, because he had to be in there early, and evenings he didn't get home till the chores was done. So, but otherwise he always had to be involved in on it. When the tornado took the top of the house off here, and we changed the angle on it, and he had to be up there. But I went and took a lariat, tied to the chimney, and let him up there in all the safety. And then we got done with the roof and got the siding filled in the gap, walked across the porch and fell down and broke his leg. It's going to be. But we were tickled because we had another neighbor that was on the roof, and he missed the bottom step and hurt himself. So that's why we was real concerned about his safety, because he was 78 or 80 about that time, so maybe a little older. But I was a mama's boy, and kids, sisters, they always knew it, that I was a mama's boy, that Daddy never was around. But mechanic, and then like my daughter there, any mechanical work or veterinary work or whatever, that she was the one that I was with, and she would help do the extra plowing and things like that there. But that's one of the things that the college was a blessing, and that's when they got rid of the screwworm epidemic. And calves born in the fall, their neighbors would get screwworms, and you would have to sit there and dig them stinking things out and put tar and dope and then wiggly little things to get them out night after night. And then if a cow or a bull had, a lot of them had horns in, they'd scratch each other or something, then we didn't have working chutes and stuff. And then you'd have to dope them and get the screwworms out. If you dehorn one, the screwworm to get in there, the cavities. I had experience one time up north of town. Went and she went berserk, and she went about a mile when neighbors was helping us, and I heard my neighbor. I had the lariat between a milo roll, and I was throwing the lariat, and I heard the neighbor scream, and that's the last thing I remember. She hit me in the chest, and I was out. But she didn't go very far, and she lay down and died. But it was just one of them things. They give their last little burst of energy. But that was one of the biggest blessings we had over all the years there, because summertime, and then you had your heel flies, and so, and then getting rid of the bangs, brucellosis, and things like that, where our state has got that cleared up too. So that was a very big help.
So you have to worry about the weather plus insects plus.
Like wheat, you anticipate losing it 8 times there because of the green bugs or getting it up. They have to take a rotary hoe and run over it because the clay crusted it over, and it's too cold, too dry, something in the hail, and so it's fun and games.
It takes dedication and a lot of hard work.
Well, the first year we got married in September, and I said, we do not borrow money, and I was paying on 2 farms at that particular time. And then in April, cleaned us out completely. And I had a place up north of town there. I got enough to get the seed weed off of it. But went out there and custom cut to get a little money in between there. In the summertime, let mine go and haul hay with other kids to get enough money to put another crop in to pay for the gas and keep enough cash to pay for the farm payments. And I had a Caterpillar build me a new pond and clean up gullies and stuff like that. They were good to me and let me ride there for a year to go there, and let farmers work together. But you was asking earlier on hiring people. We didn't hire nobody, basically. It was the 3 neighbors. One lived across the road, and Daddy's cousin over here. And we had the equipment together, tumble bug, which is scraper. And one would have a manure spreader, and he'd have a front end loader to pick up manure piles and put on your ground with your spreaders. And they did their butchering together. We'd take tires and 55-gallon drums and put them in the granary and run them up down scalding hot water, and then scrape hogs. You scrape it all off, and then everybody had fresh meat for a day or two. And all went to town to the locker plant. They had an ice plant, and they had the lockers there. And so your chickens that we butchered and the hogs and the beef was all stored in town.
In a refrigerator, by a locker plant. I'm not sure what you mean.
It was just a square container with a lock on it.
Refrigerated, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I had the ice plant, yeah. But I still got our ice box where the guy would come back with pick up chunks of ice, tell him what size, how many pounds of ice, and he would take it and put it in part of the ice box. and then you had a pan on the bottom, whereas it evaporated, you have your cool water there. But anything else like that there was stored in there. But canning and everything was your pickles, buttered bread, butter, pickles, and dills, and all was in them large 30-gallon crocks on down to smaller sizes. But we didn't have running water till we quit canning quite a bit. Where you could buy things at the store, had the cash flow to do that there. But all the years there, been nice to had water your garden and things like that there. But one fun thing was I had a large garden, and I was planting taters and onions, and had the male ostrich, and he stood 9 foot tall, and he'd stretch out, and you put the taters in there, and he'd walk along, pick them up, throw them up in the air, catch them, follow you around. And the onions is the same way. He knew exactly what you put down there. And I always made a pet out of everything. I had a female ostrich called Marie, and I let her out in the yard follow me around. But the problem was that you couldn't lay a wrench down, and if you was working on anything, she would pick it up, show it up, and eat it. And your cap and anything like that up in the air, people would come to the cameras, the shiny, but fun time me and the Lord had a talking to, and that was when the cows chased her over in the neighbors. And you don't have a halter, you get behind her, take the fence down, get behind her, and try to shove her across the creek, and try to shove her across the fence, and put the fence back up, and talk to her all the way home to bring her. And but usually she follows me around. That's the reason I always left her out. One year, my daughter, we had some German exchange students for Perry, and we kept one daughter. She's about the same age my Kathy was. And anyway, when she wanted to go back to Germany, she wanted the trampoline and Brahms ice cream. And but she was used to our eating, because basically German food, tater, meat, and vegetable, every homemade bread for every meal. And so the others had whatever you could get downtown, your junk food, and they got homesick. But my daughter didn't hit too many classes that year, because she'd go with the German classes, and while she was taking German, and they'd go to the courthouses in Oklahoma City, to the legislature and things like that. And so then she'd be in a speech contest or band contest, track contest, and I said, "Don't you ever go to a class?" But son, he had to study for his, and she didn't. When she got to college, she didn't know how to study, and it was easy for him, because I made a deal with him that I would pay the first semester's deal if and so he was on the honor roll then the first semester, so it wasn't beer drinking and running around. It was serious there, so that worked out pretty good.
And where did they go to college?
That was my money, and the kids went to OSU. Daughter stopped one semester, went to Tonkawa, and then back to OSU.
Have I forgotten to ask anything? Is there anything else you want to say before I ask my last question?
Probably not. I don't know.
Well, we can turn back on. We usually have people answer last is what they see for the farm for the next 100 years. What do you see happening with it?
How about the next 5 to 10 years with our president we have right now and EPA? I don't see farming is going to be, because it's milk. They say that's a oil product, so they got to dock around their milk containers for the dairies, and hogs the other day they had that they wasn't going to have them cut their needle teeth, so you cut them so they don't cut up the sow's udders, and you cut the tails, dock them so they don't chew on them. They said you can't do that, and you can't castrate the boars, and you can't eat meat off a hog from a boar. It's just too rancid. The odor is so strong. And like when we used to have our boars, and we would have the kids from ag class, and we would come and castrate them. We'd call them stag the boars, and usually just put a wire around his nose and tie him to a post while he's backing up, and then flip him. But one time I was sitting there holding the front foot up, and he relieved in my back pocket when I went back to class, my 5th and 6th hours. Nobody said by me. But now they want to have your animals, and treated, and not, no cruelness to the animals, and not be caged and things like that there, and the dust and the chemicals and the paperwork. And it's just like right now on the elk, that has somebody come out and can uncheck your fence and see what kind of lots and everything that you have there. And the more the government gets involved right now, and when they're going to let they're complaining about farmers getting some money back. Well, if they would look at the percent of ag expense from the government, it all goes to small communities, to right now it's put electronics to small communities, housing, so there's enough kids to go to school to keep a school open, and all your, right now, the people that's getting misplaced where they're losing their homes and stuff like that there. And that's all agriculture money going. And people say, hey, look what the agriculture expense is. But the man on the farm is getting very little. And combine, $250,000, tractor, $250,000. You got a silage cutter. Them guys have to go custom work because individual farmer can't afford that type of money. And people are buying the land away from the farmers for recreation. And you take school land right here, the price that they're running them up, it's just for hunting. And if you're lucky enough that you can talk the guy and letting you to rent the pasture or something, but they don't want it cleaned up because they want to brush it out there for their entertainment. And it's just competition. And there's so few farmers, and they're trying to get younger people involved. They're coming up with different programs, but EPA and things like that, there, no dust, and the chemicals, and just like your fertilizers right now, urea is basically like it was last year, but what is there, 5 to 8% in the United States, the rest of it's imported in. Now we have competition between China and India, and so
it's tough.
1846 right now is what, 157% what it was, higher than it was a year ago. And a couple years ago, I put 1846. I paid over $1,200 a ton, and you just don't put very much on this old type clay here. You can't put a crop out, and without fertilizing twice a year, you got to have a starter fertilizer, and which is basically 1846 phosphate your starter. And potash used to pay $60 a ton, and now it's one of the highest parts. And so it don't look very good, Remy. And your cattle market, this is the first time I can know anything about it, that grain and cattle both went up. Usually your grain goes up and the cattle goes down, and vice versa in the feedlot. But right now, it's the only time I've ever read that you can have both of them going up at the same time. But with the price of fuel, how many hundreds of dollars? You're talking about almost $1,000 in the morning to fill 2 or 3 tractors up with diesel, and that just for one day, you know, on this large equipment. So I don't think it's very good, you know. But if government would get out of it and let the farmers farm, I think there's a good future there, because there's less farmland and there's a lot of people being born all the time. But that's my view. It just, we need Uncle Sam out of our stuff. How do you run a combine in dry weather trying to knock the chaff off of it and not make dust, you know? So just items like that there, that they come up, you work around, and that's dirt. If you're going to stir it, you drive down the roads there. It's just like coal. We're sending our high sulfur coal from eastern Oklahoma over to Japan, and we're getting ours out of Wyoming and areas like that there. And look what the cost is for where we have it just within a few miles. Look at Muskogee. There's a generator there, and the coal field's just a few miles from there. It's just, if you can get that sulfur out of it, how much less the cost of energy would be. And that's the other thing is electricity is going to be the other item there for farmers, because everything's getting automated, and you need electricity for all your equipment that you run, your welders, to move grain and anything like that has to have electricity. And so energy is going to be the other problem that's going to be a challenge for that, between the fertilizer and energy, and then EPA.
A lot of pieces to the puzzle. Well, what do you expect to happen to the land? Will it pass down to your daughter, or?
I'm giving to my kids now, because I'm getting where I can't get around, and that way it's in the family as much as I can that way.
Anything else? Well, that's it, unless you want to say something else. You don't want to sing for us?
No.
Well, thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure.